Good evening and welcome to The Breakdown. I am Tara Setmayer. The Rick Wilson will be joining us shortly, and we are just hours away from Joe Biden's inauguration. At this time, tomorrow night, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will officially be sworn in as President and Vice President of the United States. It has felt like dog years waiting for this day to come, but we are on the precipice of a new dawn in America starting tomorrow at 12:01 p.m. But before we get there, we still have one more, less than 24 hours of Donald Trump's presidency. And tonight we want to take a little bit of a look back at some of the most notorious things about Trump's presidency and what may be waiting for him in his post-presidency life. So we have two great guests for you tonight. First up, we'll have Noah Bookbinder from Crew. He's the executive director of the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. They do amazing investigative legal work into corruption and ethics issues in government. The Trump Organization has been at the forefront of their efforts over the last few years, and they have a new report out about some of the incredible conflicts of interest in the Trump administration. So Noah will be here to talk to us about that and kind of how we hold these people accountable for their misdeeds. And then later in the show, we will have Tim O'Brien. He is a Bloomberg opinion columnist, and he's a Trump biographer. He knows Donald Trump pretty well. He's spent time with him writing a book, and he has some very interesting insights into Donald Trump, some of his legal woes, and what it looks like after the post presidency where he's no longer under immunity as president. So stay tuned for Noah and Tim. They'll be coming up in a bit. As always, we want to hear from you. Send us your tweets with the hashtag #AskTheBreakdown. There it is. And of course, you can always try to get through to us through our Zoom room. And if we can, we'll get you in as a live caller and you can talk to us live on the air later on in the show. And we'll look forward to that because I know you guys have a lot of questions. There's so much happening. But first, yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. And it got a little short shrift this year because of the inauguration and everything that's been going on. But not here. The Lincoln Project did a beautiful tribute video. If you have not seen it, you should go check it out. But what was interesting about all of this is that, of course, when Martin Luther King Day comes around every year, people post the quotes and these beautiful photos of King and what he represented, which is important because we need to recognize his legacy. And words do matter. He had some of the most powerful, beautiful, impactful words in the history of our country. And unlike Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who spent the day yesterday performing community service, because for a lot of people, Martin Luther King Day is a day of service. Biden was distributing food in Delaware, and Kamala Harris, I believe her and her husband were here in Washington, distributing food as well. And that's not what the GOP was doing, though. That's not what Donald Trump was doing. Donald Trump was having many meetings and many calls or watching or whatever. What he wasn't doing was tweeting because he can't do that anymore. But what a lot of Republicans were doing, they were tweeting out these platitudes, all these wonderful words from Martin Luther King and exalting him and how wonderful he was. Yet, these were the same people who voted to decertify a free and fair election that would have disenfranchised millions and millions of African American votes, which is exactly what Martin Luther King gave his life fighting for. Civil rights, voting rights, equality in this country. And yet, the Republicans, with no self-awareness, they were out there just tweeting away and posting wonderful quotes of Martin Luther King. Let's take a look at some of them.
The United States of America, all legal ballots must be counted. Any illegal ballots must not be counted.
We have tens of millions of Americans that think that the election was rigged as a carnival ring toss.
In this 10-day period, at least 30,000 new voters registered to vote in Arizona. All of these votes are unconstitutional. It does not matter.
Those terms, but I would say that the conditions in Haiti are deplorable. They are disgusting. I mean, it's everywhere you look in Haiti, it's sheet metal and garbage when I was there.
Every recount needs to be finished. We got challenges inside courts. Every challenge needs to be heard.
We know for a fact that President Trump won Georgia. We do not believe Joe Biden won our state. We are not a blue state.
And Mitch McConnell and I need to come up with an oversight of mail-in balloting. If we don't do something about voting by mail, we're going to lose the ability to elect a Republican in this country.
Such duplicitous jerks. It's unbelievable. But as always,
Unreal.
Abe is watching, right?
Unreal.
Hey, Rick Wilson, welcome.
Well, look, Tara, I mean, that set of videos you just showed demonstrates to me that the Republican Party, as it is constituted today, is bending the arc towards stupid. I mean, these people really believe that they think we're going to buy the fact that they want to disenfranchise tens of millions of African American voters by canceling out the votes of African Americans in Georgia, in Philadelphia, in the Pennsylvania and Philadelphia area specifically, in Wisconsin, in Michigan. You know, they really believe anybody's going to buy that crap at this point. And you know, if that's the case, I have a bridge I want to sell them because it's truly absurd.
Or a Trump steak. You have a Trump steak you want to
Trump
sell
steak.
them. And fly them on a trip on
magically
Trump Airlines.
delicious.
You know, it's just unbelievable. And in that montage, they showed Marjorie Taylor Greene, that QAnon crazy down there in Georgia. Georgia was where Martin Luther King, Atlanta, Georgia, is what made him, right? He was the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, which now Reverend Warnock, who will be the first Black senator from Georgia, also was the head of Martin Luther King's old church there. And I mean, there's so much history, and these people have the audacity to sit there and try to elevate King's legacy as if they actually believe any of their words. I also saw today that the Gwinnett County Republican chair basically put out a statement saying that they're going to move to make it much more difficult for people to vote, because that's the only way they can win. It's really saying the quiet part out loud with these people. And I can assure our Lincoln Project viewers that Lincoln Project is on this, and we as a pro-democracy organization will continue to support pro-democracy reforms and things that will help make voting easier for people in this country. We should not be trying to do things to make voting more difficult so that disenfranchisement is a way to win. That is not what we do here anymore. You know, Republicans did that a lot. We don't do that. And we are watching what goes on in that. Rick, guess what else is happening? Guess what?
I don't know. It's a pretty quiet day tomorrow, right, Tara? Not much going on tomorrow.
Listen,
what could it be? What
thanks
could
to
it be?
Facebook, right? So thanks to Facebook, I get reminded what I was doing on this day multiple years in a row. And in 2017 on this day, I was standing in front of the Capitol where it was fenced off, but not like it is now. They always fence it off a little bit for seating for the inauguration. I was standing there like this with my head in my hands because I was just so dismayed at the fact that Donald Trump would be inaugurated at that very spot the next day. I was absolutely devastated. I was just fearful of what the hell was going to happen. I couldn't believe this was happening. And I have a complete different attitude going into tomorrow. I am giddy. I haven't been this happy about an inauguration since 2004, honestly. So, Rick, what else happens usually in the last day before a presidential departure? What do presidents usually do with their pen?
Well, most presidents obviously have a specialized moving company come to remove the coffin Stephen Miller slept in under the White House. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not most presidents. That's just Trump. Um, but we usually see a few last minute pardons, and we're going to see some from Trump. I know there have been a few popped out so far, but apparently a lot of the Trump right people are very disappointed he has not decided to pardon Julian Assange, who was one of their, one of Sean Hannity's besties and Roger Stone's besties. So he's not going to pardon that guy, at least. But we also see the sort of chaos of an administration that never had a compass, never had a steering point, never had a North Star. It was all about him all the time. And so normally we'd see a president greet the president-elect at the White House in the morning with the first ladies. They would exchange gifts. They would exchange notes. He would leave a note for the incoming president. And George Bush left a very gracious note for Barack Obama. And Barack Obama left a gracious note for Donald Trump. And Bill Clinton left a gracious note for George W. Bush, and so on and so on and so on. I predict that we'll see some sort of scribbled crayon thing tomorrow from Trump, like fuck you, cuck. Some Trumpian kind of excess. But none
That might be in Stephen Miller's office.
None of the things that transition normally includes are really going to be present here this year. We're going to see, and we have seen, a very hostile transition. We've seen, and I mean that before the attempted coup and seizure of our capital. We've seen a hostile transition where there's been almost zero cooperation in the departments. We've seen them do everything they can to set back the Biden administration from coming in with their feet on the ground and a running start. And so, Donald Trump is such a petty, small little bitch that tomorrow he's going to run away to Andrews Air Force Base. He's not going to go to the inauguration. He's going to run to Andrews Air Force Base and jump on Air Force One for his last ride ever back to Mar-a-Lago. Look, we've all become accustomed, Tara, to this at this point. And you and I've talked about this before. This is a guy who's just small. He does not fit the job. He's not big enough for this job. He didn't grow into the presidency, and nothing the presidency brought to him could change his fundamentally low character. So what we're going to see tomorrow is a whiny bitch, stompy foot reaction. He's going to run to the airport at Andrews, at Joint Base Andrews, get on a plane and leave because he can't take the fact that he got his ass beat in the election.
But first, Rick Wilson, he's going to have a send-off, right? Because what would it be without a Donald Trump tacky event before he left? And so it's been reported that he wanted this military send-off with all this pomp and circumstance before he left to make him feel good about himself. The final dictator send-off, which is, not atypical.
The missile parade.
Someone like him. Yeah. And the funny thing about this is Jim Acosta, my colleague at CNN, was reporting that a lot of people aren't showing up to this thing. People have been getting invitations like John Kelly, the former chief of staff, Anthony Scaramucci, the mooch. These are people getting invites to go. Clearly, I mean, Scaramucci was like,
troll the shit out of him.
That's what George Conway said. George was like, let's all go. Because Mooch was like, clearly they're working off an old email list because I don't think I will be going there. John Kelly said the same thing. And you know who else isn't going? Pence isn't even going. Mike Pence isn't going. He's Pence like, sorry, I can't go. It's logistically not a good thing. And
I'm washing my hair,
Yeah. You said Corey Lewandowski. Even Corey. I saw you tweeted that earlier today.
Corey Lewandowski, who is a guy who's had his head so far up Trump's ass he can't even see daylight, is not going to this thing tomorrow. It is truly, I mean, these are going to be the dead enders. You should really keep track of the people that are there because they're going to be the core of Trump Qaeda as they go forward. These are the last ditch true believers. As I like to say the other day, Trump is now entering the phase of his presidency where he is pulled from a spider hole.
Oh, oh my, that is the reference to the Saddam Hussein discovery back during the Gulf War, where he was hiding in a spider hole. If only we could send Trump to a spider hole and we'd never have to hear from him again because they would have no internet there. Um, just to button this up, we've been waiting for pardons, which is something that's pretty customary the night before, day before a president leaves office. And there's been a lot of speculation about who he's going to pardon. Will he pardon himself? Will he pardon his family, Giuliani? And it's being reported that the delay is that Trump is going back and forth, agonizing over whether he should pardon Steve Bannon. Yes, that's Steve Bannon. That seems to be the holdup. And there's a lot of people, like
Get
Rick
the
said, who are not
fuck out
happy.
of here.
Right,
Get the
exactly. Are
fuck
they
out of here.
serious,
Listen,
Bannon?
if he pardons the Gristle Icarus, the founder of Nazi Hogwarts, the whiskey necromancer, the human scab, good God in heaven. If he pardons Steve Bannon, this is a sign of the absolute disregard for any law, justice, sensibility in the universe. I don't expect any better. I predict he'll have Steve Bannon like waxing his car by the end of the day tomorrow if it would get Bannon off the hook. But this is a guy who is the most reprehensible part of the alt-right feeder system. He is a outright giant douchebag Nazi scumbucket. Steve Bannon, you could sell pay-per-view to watch Steve Bannon consumed by wild dogs, and America's deficit would be eliminated. He's the worst person in the world, and he's the architect of the alt-right neo-Nazi Trumpism that we've seen. Steve Bannon does everything but wear the fancy uniform with the armband. This guy, if he pardons this guy, it tells you everything about Donald Trump. If you didn't already know.
Right. That's for
Now,
sure.
later I'll get warmed up and tell you how. Later, I'll get
Yeah.
warmed up and tell you how I really feel about Steve Bannon.
I knew that would get Rick going. Rick can't stand Steve Bannon. So anytime you launch into a Steve Bannon tirade, it is glorious, and I'm here for it.
Anytime Steve Bannon wants to sleep at night, he should remember, no matter what, he should never forget, we will never take our eyes off you. You know why Nazi Hogwarts went away? Because we kept our eyes on you. You know why your little
right.
European plans are falling apart? We have our eye on you. Abe is watching, bitch.
And there you have it from Rick Wilson himself. Speaking of BITCHs, Mitch McConnell was on the floor of the House today, of the Senate today, waxing poetic about how Donald Trump incited the mob during the insurrection, mincing no words, and that he provoked it. He actually used that term. He acknowledged that Donald Trump provoked the insurrection at the Capitol, and that he fed people lies. And it was because of those lies that all those people got whipped up and tried to stage a coup. Thanks, Mitch. Nice to hear it from you now because you lost power as the Senate Majority Leader and you're really pissed off at Donald Trump for costing you the Senate. Now you find your balls. No, nobody wants to hear that right now. We really don't care. I mean, that's great, but unless you actually convict him and move forward and make Donald Trump pay for what he has done finally and unequivocally with a conviction in the Senate, I don't want to hear it from Mitch McConnell. So all this talk, that's wonderful for your legacy, and you want to try to, whitewash your complicity in all of this mess. But put your money where your vote is and convict him so he never runs for office again. Damn it. Now, something
and Tara,
else.
let's remember, he controls that caucus.
That's right.
Mitch controls that caucus. He can tell them what to do. He could line them up and make them bark like dogs. And if he wants to, and he should want to, but what do I know? If he chooses to, he will release enough of his members to convict Donald Trump by 2 votes, so no one has to cast the deciding vote, and it will be over. Trump will never run for office again. It will be done. We will have removed the cancer. Now, it's still going to affect us for a long time and hurt us for a long time, but McConnell could do that. He could do that tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. So make a decision and stop pussyfooting around. Enough is enough. You can talk. You can, run the Senate and chew gum and convict Donald Trump and pass legislation at the same time. Enough is enough now playing around with it. Speaking of lies.
Let's talk in bullshit walks.
That's right. Donald Trump has told thousands and thousands of lies. And one of the biggest lies has been the fact that COVID hasn't really been a big deal. It was China's fault and we couldn't do anything about it. And he's just been so incredibly calloused about this pandemic. And it's just part of his psychosis. And we'll talk to Tim O'Brien in a little bit about that. But the absolute contrast between Donald Trump and Joe Biden could not be any more stark. I mean, Joe Biden was asked in an interview if he was the polar opposite of Donald Trump. And he said, gosh, I hope so. And it's clear. And the way that we are starting, the way this new administration is being ushered in, has been absolutely fantastic thus far. I don't know if anyone saw earlier today Joe Biden's very emotional farewell speech in Delaware, where he literally cried tears as he talked about his son, the meaning of family, the importance of the state of Delaware to him, and his humble servant's heart. And they went from Delaware straight to Washington, where they had this memorial, which we're showing right now, a tribute to the 400,000 dead Americans from COVID, recognizing this awful milestone that we surpassed today on Donald Trump's watch. It was an unbelievably moving ceremony, and whoever came up with this as a inauguration event, I praise them for it, because we have not had enough recognition of what's going on. I fear that this country has become desensitized to the absolute horror and the loss of life and the suffering from COVID because of the tone that was set by Donald Trump. And I watched that, Rick, and my husband, he was working today. He was on duty. And when he came home, he saw those images and he said, you know, maybe it's a good thing that all the crowds weren't here in Washington, because it really, the somber moment that we're in, it struck a certain tone. And I said to him, you know what, hon, that's actually very observant of you. Perhaps all the pomp and circumstance that's normally around an inauguration isn't what we need right now. Maybe we need that quiet reflection as we usher out the horror of the Trump administration and usher in this new dawn, that it was a time for a national collective moment of silence as we look upon the sunrise of the next day and of this new administration. And I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, because it was appropriate. It was an appropriate moment for that, for just the quiet of it all.
It really was, Tara, and the images of those flags and of the spotlights tonight, they captured the loss and the pain of this country, where 400,000 people have died, where millions of families have lost a mother, a father, a grandfather, a grandmother, a child, a husband, a wife, all for nothing, all to satisfy the mania and ego of this president, and all to satisfy the people who said he could do no wrong. And Joe Biden's biggest job is COVID. It's the biggest job in the world. Got to do it. Can't keep this loss going. We can't sustain it as a country, as a people. And the idea that yesterday, the 400,000 people who have died in this country were finally memorialized in a way that really impacts the American people. It's a staggering moment. It's a tragic moment. And we will dunk on Donald Trump. We will mock his loss. We will have fun with the fact that despite all the big talk and all the BSing and all the bluster and all the chest beating, at the end of the day, Americans made a decision, and it was America or Trump, and they chose America. But what we saw with Joe Biden's speech today was a return to dignity, to decency, to humanity, and the end of a long, shitty era. And it could not come soon enough.
Amen to that. Everything you just said. And on that note, before we bring in tonight's guest, talk about that era that we are saying goodbye to and couldn't be happier to say good riddance, let's take a look at our recap since the last time we were together.
The best is yet to come.
Today marks President Trump's last full day in office.
With that impeachment trial in the Senate looming.
His final days in office spent mostly alone.
They haven't even bothered to list what he's actually doing. It says that he's going to make many calls and have many meetings. He wrote that paragraph himself. That is what has been on his schedule for about 2 weeks now.
Though he is expected to issue a flurry of pardons for others, over 100 names, including rapper and Trump supporter Lil Wayne.
When you have all that power that he's had and then you lose it, and then all the lawsuits that are going to come at him, he's in deep trouble.
Who's going to defend Donald Trump?
This was the most serious presidential crime in the history of the United States of America.
A president who incited an insurrection, the only president in American history to be impeached twice, all during a deadly and devastating global pandemic. Critics are calling him among the worst presidents in American history.
Kicking off a somber inaugural under heavy security, the Biden theme, America United. He will take the oath at noon tomorrow, take the reins of an America in crisis as President Trump prepares to leave the White House without attending his successor's inauguration.
There will not be even the most perfunctory greeting for Dr. Jill Biden as incoming First Lady from Melania Trump, no doubt part of that Be Best campaign.
Following the chaos at the Capitol last week, safety measures have increased in D.C. and state capitals around the country.
There are now more troops in Washington, D.C. than U.S. military in Afghanistan and Iraq combined.
But it is still going to be this moment of renewal. We have to remember what this is all about. Our democracy literally picking itself up, dusting itself off, and moving forward.
God, we can't be rid of that soon enough.
As of right now at this taping, we are a mere 15 hours away.
Nobody's
the longest,
counting.
longest worst trip ever. And this is a long running battle. And,
yes.
and there will be a satisfaction tomorrow, not just because evil has been defeated at the ballot box, but because good is replacing it.
That's right. That's right. And speaking of that evil and corruption and all of some of the horribleness of the non-draining the swamp aspect of the 4 years that we've had to deal with Donald Trump, let's bring in tonight's guest, Noah Bookbinder. Noah is the executive director of CREW, which stands for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. It's a nonpartisan legal watchdog group. And CREW works to advance ethical, accountable, and open government that all Americans deserve. They target government officials who sacrifice the common good to special interests and personal gain. Previously, Noah served as the chief counsel for criminal justice for the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee and as attorney for the Department of Justice's Public Integrity Section. So I'd say that, Noah, you are qualified to talk about ethics and good government. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So, Noah, CREW came out with a pretty extensive report summing up in an easily digestible way the overarching ongoing corruption of the Trump administration over the last 4 years and some of the biggest conflicts of interest. You guys came up with 3,737 instances of conflicts of interest. And you said that there could be hundreds, if not thousands more than that. But that's enough in and of itself. Talk a little bit about some of the conflicts of interest that stood out to you the most.
Sure, absolutely. So during that time that you all talked about, when Donald Trump was paying little or no attention to the pandemic that was ravaging our country, he never forgot to use his office to enrich himself, and more than that, to put out his businesses as a kind of one-stop corruption shop, where everybody who wanted to influence this administration, who wanted to curry favor with Donald Trump in the hopes of getting favorable policies, knew that they could hold events at his resorts, that they could rent a floor at his hotels, they could play around of golf at his golf courses, and that's what happened. Literally about 3 times a day, every day of his presidency. So you have the government of Saudi Arabia, which literally made the difference between between his New York hotel being in the red or being in the black for a quarter, and by renting out a whole floor on his hotel. And not that long after that, when Saudi Arabia actually murdered a U.S.-based journalist, Donald Trump did nothing. And that kind of thing happened again and again. You had industries like the private prison industry and the payday lending industry holding conferences at Trump events and doing really, really well under Donald Trump's watch. That was the kind of corruption we saw day in and day out.
So it's fair to say that there was no draining of the swamp under Donald Trump's reign as president here. It was more like filling it up, and it was overflowing from the sewage pipes coming out of the White House. It was so corrupt throughout the entire thing. And that was what was so frustrating for me, because they kept trying to put this forth that Donald Trump is this champion of the little guy, and he gives voice to the average person, and he's not an elitist, he's one of us. And it was such a ruse throughout this entire thing, how he was able to convince millions of people of this. Meanwhile, on the other hand, he was engaged in continually enriching himself, or attempting to, throughout the presidency. He never divested from his businesses, right? And he promised that he wouldn't do any foreign deals overseas. Talk a little bit about the foreign deals that you guys uncovered.
Absolutely. I mean, it happened, at every level, from the biggest to the most petty. So during Donald Trump's presidency, both he and his daughter got dozens of trademarks from foreign countries, which they can use for years to sell products and services that could make them all kinds of money. Often those trademarks would show up at very sensitive moments in relations between, say, the United States and China, or the United States and Argentina was another one where Donald Trump kind of waited until after he got trademarks that he was looking for that might enable him to open a major resort before he took damaging trade action against Argentina. He kind of waited till he got what he wanted before he did anything that could damage his chances of getting those valuable benefits. But you also had things like countries like Turkey, which an association that had close affiliations with the Turkish government held a number of major events at the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. And Turkey, again, is a country, increasingly authoritarian country, which got handled with kid gloves by Donald Trump. And sometimes it was as simple as a foreign diplomat tweeting that they were staying that they were having a good meal at the Trump Hotel, which was a way of kind of paying tribute to Donald Trump that could be effective, but was pretty low cost. And sometimes it was much, much more valuable benefits, like we saw with Saudi Arabia.
Rick, I'll bring you in a second. You said, Noah, in your report that he got 70 trademarks from 11 foreign governments, from China to Argentina to the European Union and Turkey and other places that you mentioned that were doing business there. And we haven't even gotten into Ivanka. Go ahead, Rick.
I mean, this is a country that has long prided itself on having a kind of robust immune system to the kind of corruption that we mock in lesser developed countries. And we would always say, in Kraplakistan, of course, the dear leader is easily bribed by, a shipment of lobsters in an ice chest or a Rolex or whatever. Is there any modern comparison or historical comparison to the corruption, the evident corruption the Trump administration has displayed in the last 4 years? Is there anything even close in our lifetimes? Because Watergate at the bottom line still wasn't about money; it was about power, and so that was a little more explicable. Is there any comparable example of this that you can think of?
There's nothing remotely comparable. I mean, in the days of Jimmy Carter, there was a lot of consternation about, would he maintain ownership of his peanut farm, which he which he did put into a blind trust. This was, there were questions about, whether Barack Obama would receive royalties from foreign libraries buying copies of his book. These were sort of tiny, tiny things in past administrations. Whereas in this administration, you had Donald Trump making likely well over $100 million just by his own visits to his properties while president, which brought the Secret Service and a lot of other government officials there. You had Donald Trump really essentially putting out word that whoever wanted to curry favor with him, whoever wanted more power, should just come to his businesses, so that Republican campaign fundraisers were routinely held at Trump properties. And officials would come day in and day out. He made well over, I think it was over $11 million in campaign events held at his properties. Sort of and industries and foreign governments, and the list went on, and it was all done in largely in broad daylight. I mean, we expect that there were probably lots more that we don't know about, but what we do know about is absolutely staggering in scale.
It is unbelievable, and I just don't know that the American people appreciate the scale and scope of the corruption that took place and the self-dealing and the enrichment, not only from Trump, but from Jared and Ivanka as well. We saw their financial disclosures every year that showed they made hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that possible when they were supposed to be divested from their businesses and working on behalf of the American people? People thought they were so wonderful because they didn't draw salary. And it was like, hello, this wasn't about that. It was about them enriching themselves and setting themselves up for the post-presidency, where they could dig into their, the contacts they made with foreign governments and everybody else, especially that Jared. So it's infuriating to watch this. I think we have a tweet though for you, Noah. Let's pull it up. Is there any legislation needed to shore up conflict issues with politicians, or does it already exist and just not being enforced? That's Thomas Payne 333. So Noah, is there, are there laws in the books that are supposed to stop this and they just turn a blind eye, or do we need a law? What do we need? How do we hold these people accountable for this?
It's really both. I mean, you start with the US Constitution, which says that a president can't be taking benefits from foreign governments or from domestic governments, from the federal government and the states. Those are what are known as the emoluments clauses, which was something none of us thought about 5 years ago, but we all spent more time than we ever imagined we would thinking about it in the past 4 years. That's the law of the land. That's the Constitution, and the president violated it every day. Crew actually went to court in a couple of different cases to try to stop those violations, and won with our partners in those cases so far. But it takes years to work your way through the courts. But at the same time, the laws are also deficient. That there are laws that prevent a lot of government officials from having conflicts of interest and from holding on to businesses that could conflict with their work, but they don't apply to the president or the vice president. That needs to change. And so, that starts with the For the People Act, the bill that's now been the first bill introduced by the House of Representatives this year. It's going to be the first bill that the Senate is going to introduce. I know you all have been supportive of that piece of legislation. And that's going to include some really good fixes that are going to start to close some of those gaps. And so it's going to be important to apply those laws to the president and to have really strong enforcement measures so that you don't have to take years and years in court to even have a chance to get anywhere at stopping blatant corruption from playing out every day.
That's right. And I think it's important for people to know that there are ways to remedy this. This should not be the new normal. And I suspect that with the Biden administration, that there will be reforms put in place to make sure we don't ever see this level of corruption ever again. They're going to plug those holes because Trump exploited some of them in ways that we'd never seen before. And those days are over. A quick yes or no before we let you go, Noah. You said that Trump spent his entire presidency to promote his businesses and that he would leave office and still benefit from them. But since the insurrection and since he's been deplatformed and all of that, do you still think that he's going to reap the benefits of the presidency the way you may have thought prior to the insurrection?
I think the answer is no. I think that it's crucial that people who do business with him understand that they are going to be seen as endorsing somebody who incited an insurrection if they continue to give valuable business to the president. We're already seeing people like organizations like the PGA and New York City remove business from the president. That has to keep happening. We're going to be watching to make sure that it does.
As will we. Thank you so much, Noah. Noah Bookbinder from Crew. They do amazing work. Be sure to follow them on their website. Check out that report that they just put out, and you can see it's very easy. They break it down, examples of Trump's conflicts of interest and staffers and everything else. It's absolutely infuriating, but I suspect that he will pay a price for it at some point in the future. We'll talk to Tim O'Brien, who's coming up, about that. Thanks so much, Noah. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes, that's something else we can add to Donald Trump's horrible legacy is his legacy of corruption. So before we bring in Tim O'Brien, let's take a look at what Trump has left behind. That says a lot right there. My goodness gracious. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the 4 years that we've gone through. Let's bring in our next guest, Tim O'Brien. Let's talk some more about the Trump legacy.
Brian.
Hello, my friends.
Yes, he is the executive director of Bloomberg Opinion. He's also an award-winning columnist with a exclusive focus on the presidency of Donald Trump. He's a bit of an expert. He's also written a Trump biography, Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald, and one of the few people in the world who's ever seen Donald Trump's tax returns. Welcome, Tim.
It's good to be here, Tara. Hey, Rick.
Yeah. Folks, Tim O'Brien is one of the experts in a small field of what I call the anthropologist of the shittiest human being ever. He is one of these folks who understands the way Donald Trump's brain works, his business works, and the way his various mental weirdnesses have led to the presidency we just barely survived. So, Tim, welcome. Thank you for being here, man.
It's great to be here. Great to be here, especially on the night before we break the ball and chain off of our national ankle.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So true. That's why I wanted Tim on tonight, because I said, as someone who has had the unfortunate experience of spending way too much time in Donald Trump's brain and writing books and columns about him, you do have a unique perspective that I think people should hear. And to Rick's point about the anthropologists of the worst human being on the planet right now, Politico did a roundup with you and some of the other Trump biographers. And Michael D'Antonio is one of them, friend of mine, friend of the show. We've had him on. And it was interesting because in 2015, you guys did a roundup and talked about your experiences with Trump and kind of what you anticipated. And most of you didn't expect that he would win, like a lot of us. And so Politico decided to do now, here we are 5 years later. Did you learn anything? You know, was there anything different? And, you know, you had some interesting things to say in that piece, and I encourage people to go check the whole thing out. But in your piece, in that piece, you talk about, like, you're asked, did you learn anything new about Donald Trump? What did you learn about him? And you had a really interesting answer.
Zero, zilch. In the most general way, what Donald Trump's presidency would look like, I think, was utterly predictable. How he would behave, how he would act out, how he would disappoint, how he would destroy, how he would dissemble. I could try to keep going on with alliterations here, but all of that in generalities was entirely predictable. The specifics, you couldn't predict the ways in which his damage and his incompetence would visit itself upon the American landscape. But if you spent any time watching him or reading him, and there was decades of evidence there, you knew exactly what a car crash this administration was going to be. I don't think anyone could have predicted it would culminate in a siege in the Capitol in which legislators of both parties were running for their lives. But I don't think it was hard to predict that there would be violence on the street. But when I think about the things that have surprised me during his administration, it's more about the universe, the planets that surround him, everything in the orbit of Trump, the institutions that surrounded him, the GOP, the individuals in the White House, and how easy it ultimately was for him to corrupt key players and key institutions along the way. And I think it's easy now to sort of look at these 4 years and say that Donald Trump carried the load on all of this. And he's responsible for a lot of it, but he also ripped this Band-Aid off of all sorts of historical inadequacies we have as a nation around race, around social justice, income inequality, the plight of women, the plight of immigrants, on and on and on. And I think the reason it was so easy for him to corrupt people like, say, a Lindsey Graham or a Rudy Giuliani is they were ready to be corrupted themselves anyway. And I think a lot of the people around him saw him as either a useful idiot that they could try to use to achieve their own goals, or someone who was a gravy train. And I think that's in the sort of the elites who are around him. I think within his voting base, he represented this idea people had of success married to someone who would knock down institutions that were oppressing them. And he's never been as successful as he said, and he had no interest really in doing anything to help the people who needed help. And I've been alternately shocked and surprised at the failings of various observers and enablers around Trump.
One of the things that you said when you said that you learned nothing about him, but you learned a lot about our country. And you alluded to this just now about how easily he was able to steamroll people, institutions, and things that we didn't think would succumb to him. What do you think about the enablers in the media? This is something that has kind of propped him up over the course of his entire career, because Donald Trump couldn't have done this by himself. He's had people that have propped him up throughout the years, including now with a media ecosystem on the right that is just flat out dangerous at this point. We're at North Korea, Baghdad Bob level lies and propaganda coming from a major network and other subsidiary right-wing networks that is led to an insurrection, and God knows what happens after he leaves. But Talk a little bit about the role you feel that the enablers, particularly in the media, have played in propping him up.
Well, first and foremost, obviously, is Fox News. And again, the Fox News apparatus was embedded and rolling long before Donald Trump came on the scene. Roger Ailes and Fox had spent a couple decades perfecting this before Donald Trump came in and became the sort of perfect talking head for the Fox ecosystem. And nonetheless, Fox chose to go in whole hog on Donald Trump's presidency, and by whole hog, meaning they were willful spreaders of propaganda and disinformation. They were willing to put the lives of their viewers at risk when they misled people about the response to the coronavirus, an epic pandemic that Trump was simply not up to intellectually, emotionally, or managerially. And Fox empowered and enabled all of the dangerous pablum that came out of the White House, and still up until this team is leaving, up until this very day, about the rollout of the vaccine, around Trump's impeachment, and the starkest example is January 6th, when within hours of an event happening that Trump had fomented, incited, and encouraged, Fox is finding excuses to make for Donald Trump. Well, maybe it was Antifa. Maybe he really didn't encourage those people. He was really just telling him that he loved them. All of this
garbage.
They're
still doing it, Tim. They're still doing it.
Still
Rita Bartiromo today had a clip where she said she referenced the Democrats who were dressing up as MAGA people on January 6th, pushing that lie still when it's obvious and demonstrably false. Here she is, an anchor on Fox News, about to go to primetime at the 7 o'clock slot, pushing this bullshit still, trying to deceive people.
They've now slashed. They've slashed a big cohort of their news desk that called the Arizona race for Biden, which
Chris
was
Darwall.
accurate and true and factual, and we know it to be true. But Trump went into a fit about it, and the network is so in the tank with Trumpism, and that will continue beyond Trump, that they're cleaning out people there that do real work and do real reporting. I think the other arm I think the Wall Street Journal editorial page really decided to just avoid the fact pattern and go in with the president, often in unfortunate ways. I think they finally backed out on January 6th, shook them up finally, but that was, I think, far too late. There was a lot of folks in the major media that did great work next to those two institutions. And then I think you have to think about social media, obviously. And I think Trump has really revealed the extent to which we didn't understand how social media could essentially be this anvil that upon which facts could just get pounded into flat, malleable, manipulated things that could move millions of people, not just hundreds of thousands, but tens of millions of people. And I think we have to really come to grips with social media as a media force, not just a technology platform.
Absolutely. Rick?
Television, Facebook, and Fox. The combination of those things, the merger of those three things in the minds of American voters allowed him to become president, allowed people to believe for a very long time that underneath all the bluster and bullshit and craziness was this competent executive who could negotiate and make deals and was wealthy and successful. Of course, it's true. Of course, it was always bullshit. I mean, Tim, you know this from your reporting and from New York. Donald Trump was like number 30 in real estate developers in New York. He was not in the top elite class of the biggest builders in the world. It was always BS. But he was great at playing the New York Post. Then he was great at playing a character on reality television. Then Facebook and Fox together filled this rocket with fuel, and off he went.
Rick, at one time when I was working on the book, he and I were driving out to Bedminster, to his golf course, and he was actually doing the driving where I was in the front seat. And we were talking about
Donald Trump drives?
Yeah, he likes to drive at that time. I don't know that he does any longer.
Wow.
We also drove around Palm Beach in his Ferrari once, which when you talk about the anthropological side of Donald Trump, he would stop at stoplights and roll the windows down so I could see people in Palm Beach get excited that Donald Trump was driving his Ferrari. But in any event, we're driving out to the golf course, and I had asked him a bunch of critical questions, and he said, maybe I'll just have to sue you. And I said, well, if you're going to sue me, why did you even participate to begin with in the book? And he said, 3 reasons. He said, number one, I really like you, which I don't think is true, but I think I was at the New York Times at the time. I think courting the New York Times was very important to him. Good housekeeping, seal of approval. So I think that's what answer number 1 meant. Number 2, he said, I really consider it a challenge. I want you to understand who the real Trump is. I think that was a true answer. I think he wanted, as he does with everyone in media, he wants to cultivate media. The third thing he said was, and at some level, I don't really care because I'm in a position now where I can go around the media. I basically have my own printing press. If I don't like what you write, I can go to page 6 of the New York Post or get on the Today Show in a week and say that Tim O'Brien's a whack job. He doesn't know what he's doing. He shouldn't be trusted, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't really worry about it. Now, that was in 2005, before Facebook blossomed, before Twitter was even invented. But he already had this reptilian and preternatural sense of how the media empowered him to create myths about himself and wage war on his enemies. And then he walked into social, as you just pointed out, Rick, and put that into full throttle.
Speaking of that, with his businesses and him suing you, for the viewers who don't know you, you were in fact involved in a lawsuit. Trump did sue you over the book because you were implying that he wasn't worth however many billion he claimed at the time, which is the worst, most emasculating thing ever for him, is to not be as rich as he claims. And that's why when I made the reference in your intro that you were one of the few people on the planet outside of authorities to see his tax returns, because you saw them during discovery for this whole thing. And that was where in the deposition, Trump said when he was asked about his net worth, he said it's whatever he feels like it is that day. You're sworn to secrecy because of an NDA on that, so you can't tell us what you saw. But you do know from covering him for all these years that his businesses are facing a lot of trouble, and he's in a lot of personal financial trouble once he leaves the presidency tomorrow. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is he looking at? What is threatening him the most right now?
Well, what's threatening him is he is ravenous for a number of things in life. He's ravenous for food. He's ravenous for women. He's ravenous for money. He is ravenous for revenge, and he has always been ravenous for debt. And ironically, this parallels somewhat where he was in the early 1990s, which was when I first began to cover him. I was a research assistant on Wayne Barrett's original biography of Trump. And I worked as his research assistant on that in the early 90s. And at the time, Trump had a bunch of assets, casino and real estate assets that had too much debt against it. He had personally guaranteed too much of it. And the piper came calling, and all of it got taken away from him, more or less, except for some prized holdings. He got excommunicated from the banking community. No major bank would ever do business with him again. He runs around saying, I'm the king of debt. I really know how to handle debt, which is just ridiculous, because he's the King Kong of debt. He beats his chest mightily. I can take this on, and then he falls off the top of the building the second he comes under fire.
When he had his daddy there to save him before, but his dad saved him the first time around. He doesn't have that anymore.
Exactly right. He would have gone personally bankrupt, except for tens of $1 million in loans his father extended to him to help tide him over. Otherwise, he would have gone personally bankrupt without Fred Trump's money. I interviewed him again for a gambling book I wrote in the mid-90s. And then when I was at the Times in the early 2000s, he had, at that point, say 7 of his 9 lives, or his 6th of his 9 lives. He had been reinvented as this entrepreneurial guru to the masses on The Apprentice, which was farcical, but you can't underestimate how important The Apprentice was to getting him into office. Because he transitioned from being a punchline of jokes about the excesses of the 1980s into being someone who was smart and savvy in the boardroom. Yet in the real world, his casinos were failing again. And that's when I took on this other book. And Trump Nation was really an attempt to put him in the middle of the culture. Why has this guy who's flamed out so spectacularly so many times embedded himself into so many facets of American life: politics, real estate, casinos, reality TV, public relations, the media, on and on. And I spent a lot of time with him for that book. And he was courting me assiduously. He would call me a few times a week. I would get these thick envelopes of clippings from Donald with Sharpie circled graphs of the articles that he wanted me to read. He participated in the book. One of the many conclusions in the book was that he was not the businessman he claimed to be, nor was he nearly as wealthy as he claimed to be. I really didn't care about how much money Donald Trump had. I was more interested in how he had kept this issue as a sort of social ping pong ball that kept him in the media. He was saying he was worth $6 billion at the time. He wasn't. He's been saying recently he's worth $10 billion. He's not. He sued me saying I had libeled him for underestimating his wealth. I think he thought he sued me for $5 billion, which was bigger than my advance and the difference between what he said he was worth and what I was saying he was worth. It went to court. I had great attorneys. I had the New York Times on my side. My publisher hired Mary Jo White, the former U.S. Attorney of the Southern District. And we just tore the bark off Donald and his lawyers like old trees. During the course of that litigation, I got his tax returns, his financial records, and we deposed him for 2 days, 2 8-hour sessions under oath. He lied more than 30 times during those depositions. He wanted the deposition sealed. My lawyers attached it as an exhibit to some of the court papers, and it became a public document that I thought was going to disappear sort of into the, dustbin of journalistic writing. And then he rolls down the escalator, Trump Tower, in 2015. And that deposition sort of a Rosetta Stone of his lunacy and his illegitimacy, his lying, and this myth making he tries to perpetrate around his own business record.
Before we take a caller for you, Tim, Rick, do you have another question? We have a couple callers for Tim.
Let's go ahead and get to the callers. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, let's take our first caller. Are you Gabriel from Pennsylvania?
Project Face Mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and this too.
Nice.
Oh, the gear.
Very nice.
Good
Very
job, Gabriel.
nice.
Yeah. I live in Maryland, but I go to college here in Pennsylvania.
Gotcha.
So my big question, it isn't related to the main subjects here, but it was more just kind of a lingering thought from the past couple months. So one of the things I noticed, particularly when it comes to things like polling, is that September, October, even getting close to November, it was like Biden's going to win by 6 points, 8 points, 10 points, 17 points, like crazy margins. Then once we actually get to November and the counting the votes, it's like maybe he won by 2-3 points. And the same thing was true for the Senate as well. And if I recall, that same phenomenon happened also in 2016. So the main question I have is what the hell is wrong with the political polling in America? Because there's obviously some problem if they're off that badly. And can we ever trust them again? Seriously.
Good question, Gabriel.
Yes.
Go ahead. Rick, go ahead.
Let me dig into this as the poll nerd here. Polling is fucked up, broken, got a lot wrong with it right now. We are seeing more validity out of our analytical data than the polling data. There's a transitional moment here where polling is still, in many cases, stuck in the past, where they're doing random digital calling to random numbers and hoping they're going to get something out of it. If your poll isn't done with a poll from the voter file, and it isn't done with cell phones and oversampling of minority voters, you're not really running a poll. You're just running something. You're just like doing political masturbation. It doesn't work. So polling is really screwed up right now. There are a lot of smart people, much smarter than I am at the number stuff, trying to work out some fixes on it. But mostly what you're going to need to do in the future is sample extraordinarily large numbers of people, and to be able to compare that to data you're seeing in your analytics, and to compare that to the data you're seeing in every other poll, so you get a sort of average of averages. So it's a tough question, Gabriel. It really is. It's one of the things we're really looking at hard. Our analytics in some states this year, bang on target, exactly on target to the third decimal place. In other states, right. Arizona, we knew where we were going. Maine, completely wrong. Every single public and private poll in Maine, every single one, showed Collins destroyed.
Yep. So it's a work.
We called Arizona down to the third decimal place. We were only like, our estimate was only like 1,100 people off or something like that in Arizona for what the total number would be. It was crazy good. But
right.
Rick, what do you also think about the silent? Sorry.
Go ahead, Tim.
There are a lot of people now who are declining.
The silent Trump voter phenomenon as well. Is that an unusual thing that attaches itself to Trump and both of his presidential candidacies? Is that people didn't want to tell pollsters what they were thinking? Is that? Do you think that's
that definitely came into play? Look, that goes back to Margaret Thatcher's first re-election campaign in Britain, where they said there were a lot of shy Tory voters, and there were. She was controversial, but a lot of people still liked her, and they voted her back in for second, third term. So we think there were a lot of shy Trump voters because Trumpism has become attached to a social.
Yeah.
So a lot of them were like, I don't want to tell you.
Right.
Some of them were just screwing around with pollsters. But yeah, you're exactly on point there, Tim.
Does that evaporate going forward, do you think?
And there may be people now who believe in Trumpism, nationalist populism, statism, authoritarianism, who don't want to say that they do. I mean, it's not a desirable thing. And in polling, many answers are driven by what's called the socially desirable response. Hey, are you a racist? No. Are you an environmentalist? Yeah. And people answer what they think the answer should be. So it's tricky. You got to sometimes sort of lure them into the actual question.
That is true. Before we take our next caller for the night, Tim, I wanted to ask you how serious the Cy Vance case is in New York for Trump. Because a lot of our viewers are watching this. Of course, a lot of people want to see Donald Trump pay a price for his many years of running a fraudulent business and skirting the laws. And New York seems to be the most promising avenue for that. Can you just talk a little bit about how strong that case is, and do you think that Donald Trump could actually see jail time?
I don't think Donald Trump will get put in jail. I think that's probably going to break some people's hearts when I say that, but I think he could be convicted of a crime. On the other hand, if he gets convicted of a crime, no one in the United States is above the rule of law. And the Supreme Court has already affirmed that in the legal actions around getting Trump's tax records, including Cy Vance's efforts to get the tax returns. But I think the Cy Vance case is the biggest legal existential threat that's overt and obvious right now facing Donald Trump. And I think the two big reasons there's three big reasons he invaded against the election and lied about it being rigged. You can understand most of what Donald Trump does through two lenses: self-aggrandizement or self-preservation. And the self-preservation side of the election being rigged is he's deathly afraid of the financial consequences he faces when he leaves the White House. And he's very, I think, concerned about the legal jeopardy he may be in, particularly with Cy Vance's case. I think the self-aggrandizement piece of the election rigging was Trump never wants to say he loses at anything. His gravestone will say, "I won." And I think those three things have been front of mind for him for quite a while. And on the Cy Vance front, Cy Vance is a local prosecutor. He doesn't fall under any of the federal guidelines that might protect Trump, that certainly aren't going to protect him, much less anyway once he leaves the presidency. Vance is looking at very core issues around possible accounting fraud, tax fraud, campaign finance fraud, that all bring him into the tent inside the Trump organization, and other people at the Trump organization and Donald Trump's children are exposed. And one of the things you may see here are the long knives coming out among people who know that Donald Trump is never loyal to anyone but himself. And it will be interesting to see if some of the dominoes begin falling within the Trump organization because of Cy Vance's case. And he's looking at real things. And I think one of the things that's important about what he's looking at is he's picking up a trail that Robert Mueller abandoned, which was the money trail. And
that's right.
You can't really understand Trump and Putin, or Trump in anything that he thought about overseas, without thinking about how he was motivated by money and greed to feather his own nest via those relationships. And it was always, I think, disappointing to me that Mueller wasn't more aggressive on that front. And it will be interesting to see how aggressive Cy Vance is. But Trump, I think, is nervous about it.
You know, you talk about in his post-presidency, not only that his businesses, that he's in legal trouble, but that his businesses are in trouble. And I've been repeatedly saying that his brand is tarnished forever. Jake Tapper said something I've been using a lot now because it was so poignant. He said that Trump's name not only has a stain on it, it has a blood stain on it after what happened at the insurrection. And so you covered his businesses, and we talked with Noah earlier about how he has personal loans coming up soon to the tune of $400+ million. And how damaged is his brand? Is Trump is it possible for him, if he's not going to go to jail, is he at least going to go broke?
Well, so let's come back to the loans and talk about the brand. The thing to remember about even before Trump became president is he never had this, gold-plated brand. His brand was cartoonish and ludicrous in a lot of ways, and it was attached to this pile of flotsam that included everything from mattresses and vodka to home urine exams and board games. and he would put this stuff out there and see if it floated and collect a fee. And if it didn't, he didn't care, because he felt the more his name was out there, the better. But he never made a big amount of money from it. The foundations of his wealth are a collection of buildings that sprung from both the money and the relationships he inherited from his father. About 60% of his wealth is concentrated in 5 buildings. 4 of them are in New York, 1 is in San Francisco. They are all exposed to the downdraft of COVID-19 and the way that has sideswiped residential and commercial real estate in urban areas. And he could weather the storm, depending on how much debt he has. And this has always been his lifelong story. He has way more than $400 million in debt. His assets right now are probably worth a little bit north of $2 billion. He has debts that are conservatively north of $1 billion. And he's personally guaranteed over $400 million of that. And $900 million of it comes due over the next 4 years. And a big chunk of it comes due sooner than that. So the issue here is, as his properties get squeezed and they're not throwing off the income that they used to, can he pay his debts down? Like a homeowner who's taken on a big mortgage and loses a job and doesn't have the income to pay the mortgage down. That's basically the situation that he may be in, which means a bunch of things. One, it means other real estate developers are going to try to buy this stuff at fire sale prices. And nobody in the real estate community, in which he's broadly disliked anyway, particularly in Manhattan, is going to cut him any slack. It makes him a national security threat, because Donald Trump is going to try to find financial aid from unusual sources, because the banking community has now turned its back on him because of January 6th. Even Deutsche Bank, which weathered money laundering, tax fraud, all sorts of stuff. He sued them and they stayed with him. They finally said, no, an insurrection's enough. We won't do business with you anymore. So the issue is, where does he go for financing? And what's he going to do? I have to believe that he and young Jared have really already thought about hitting up the Saudis and the Qataris and other entities in the Middle East as possible funders for Trump's plans post-White House. Well, one, should he be shown any kind of classified documents or national intelligence after he leaves the White House
No.
in a scenario in which he might be bought off by
Hell
foreign
to
power?
the no.
Right.
Hell,
Right.
right? No.
Yeah.
And then secondly, is it even, will the Biden White House pause if a foreign power starts to finance Donald Trump and say to them, this could be untoward, this could be unseemly, you may not want to do this. In which case that avenue of funding might be dried up for Donald Trump. So he's going to have these problems going, to each station of the cross, asking for a handout and being told no. The one surefire thing that he's learned, and that's not going to have a long life to it, is that, and it's part of his long con operation, is that he can make money from his voters.
That's right.
He raised over $207 million between Election Day and the end of November, perpetrating this fraud that there was, the election was rigged, and the billionaire needed a defense fund. Yeah,
and that's
but
why
I think he learned that in real time. Yeah, but he learned that in real time. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but he can't use it on his business.
For sure.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
But he can kind of sort of live off of it by, using
Holding
it
rallies.
because the way. Right, that's right. So that's maybe what his source of income is moving forward. So, well,
right. Whoever
Rick,
his new Pascal is will kick off. Whoever his new Pascal is will kick off the skim for Trump himself. So
yes, absolutely. Well, Tim, we've kept you long enough. I have one last question for the two of you, since you're both leading Trump anthropologists. What are you going to do without Donald Trump constantly in your heads every day, tweeting and the bully pulpit and all of the pomp and circumstance and powers of the presidency? What are you guys going to do without this guy?
Write about constructive, happier things. And, we have a lot of work to do in this country. We have a lot of issues. There's a lot of detritus around the feet and tailcoats of Donald Trump that need to be repaired.
Sure.
And there's a lot of good things we can write about in this country finally, because, the ogre has been ejected from the building for the time being. I've been asked this question a million times. I think I used this answer once when Rick and I were on a show together, but someone said, what's it like being inside Donald Trump's head? And I said, well, what you discover when you get in there is all you find is a putter, a cheeseburger, a porn video, and somebody else's credit card. And living in that world is not a necessarily happy thing. So I'm more than happy to be in try to get back into my own head and into greener pastures.
Well,
got
we
a democracy
appreciate
to save, guys.
Yes, we appreciate all your hard work, and you deserve a much needed mental vacation from Donald Trump. Tim O'Brien, thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Everybody, check out Tim's work over at Bloomberg, and check out his book if you are a glutton for punishment and still want to read more about Donald Trump. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
All right.
He's amazing. I love him.
Oh my God, we could have talked to him forever. The time is flying by.
Right?
I didn't want to let him go, but I was like, what else? What else can we talk about? But yeah, definitely follow Tim on Twitter too, because he's a prolific tweeter, and he always has good insight into what's happening, especially with Trump. So, before we bring in our special guests for tonight, we're going to take one last caller because they've been on hold for a long time, and I want them to get their question. We'll answer it really quickly, and then we're going to bring in our guests for our new show we're airing tomorrow here on LPTV. So let's talk to our caller. There he is. Thank you so much for patiently waiting for us. And you're muted.
You're muted.
No, I'm sorry. There it is.
There you go. You almost missed your moment.
So I've been thinking the last few days, and hearing people from Congress speaking. Some of them seem really stupid, and I don't mean that to be funny. How do we get better candidates?
They are.
I mean, and you guys would know better. I mean, how low is the bar? And how do we get better?
Here's the problem. Louis Gohmert drags the average down a lot, but we still need to do a lot better than what we've got right now. Look, there's a big chunk of the Republican Party that's decided it's going to be anti-expert, anti-science, anti-fact, anti-truth. And so it attracts people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Sidney Hyde-Smith and and Tommy Tuberville and God knows how many more. Tara and I could probably name them all night. But all those people are part of a cultural shift in the GOP that is anti-education, anti-science, anti-fact, anti-truth. And that's something you can't solve unless you reform the culture at a more base level around the Republican Party. That's my thought on it.
Right, and also closed primaries. Just on a practical structural level, the way that our voting system is set up is what's creating this environment, because the primaries are what when you breed these crazies and gives them an opportunity to do it, because you have to cater to a very specific group of registered voters. So when you have a closed primary, it can only be Republicans who vote in that primary. In some states, they have open primaries where anyone can vote in the primary, regardless of your party affiliation, which would certainly moderate the crop of candidates. So that's why you see a bit more of the crazy crop in the House versus the Senate, because the Senate, senators are voted statewide. So, but you're seeing changes in the voting structure. In some places, you're seeing ranked choice voting, which is another way of kind of getting around this idea of being held hostage to the crazies in primaries. So there's a lot of work to be done, and you best believe that changes and reforms to some of the ways that we do this are definitely on the table after what we've seen happen. So we agree. There's a lot of stupid people in Congress, but you get the people you vote for. So less stupid people need to get out and vote so the stupid people don't get in office. All right. On that note, let's bring in our esteemed special guests for tonight. The show's gone a little long, but it's important. We wanted to introduce our audience to our new co-hosts for a show that we are debuting here on Lincoln Project TV. We are expanding our content, so you will have more than just Rick and I and Jennifer Horn. And we now have Lisa Seneca and her lovely co-host Maya joining us. They are debuting their new show tomorrow night after the inauguration, called We're Speaking. And they're here with us to talk about it. Welcome, ladies.
Hey, guys.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah, this is great.
We are so excited about you guys in this show. It is just absolutely, you guys are on fire, and I think people are really going to love it.
Indeed.
Thanks.
So, Lisa, we'll start with you. It over to Maya. So, Lisa, you're not that new. You've been here before, but we are reintroducing you with your new show concept. Tell us a little bit about what We're Speaking is and how you guys came up with the concept.
Well, obviously, the name was inspired by Kamala Harris's debate with Pence when he wouldn't shut his yap, and she finally had to say a number of times, "I'm speaking." And so it's time for all of us to be speaking. So We're Speaking was born, and it's really going to be a multi-generational, multiracial conversation among women that we hope is going to contribute to fast-tracking progress toward equity, finally, in this country for women, and in particular, women of color.
And given that is the demographic, since we're making history as a country tomorrow with the inauguration of Kamala Harris, we have a beautiful woman of color who is your co-host, Maya May. Welcome to the LPTV family. Maya, where did you come from? Where did you come from? Tell us a little bit. And what made the We're Speaking show concept attractive to you? Why did you want to be a part of this project?
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to be here, first of all, so thank you for having me. And I have always been about centering women's voices, particularly now when it's so important for us to be a part of the conversation. I am a stand-up comedian, and a lot of my comedy is about the intersection of race, gender, class. And so this project really spoke to me. So when they reached out to me about it, I was like, yeah, definitely. These are things that we have to talk about. And my major in college was poli-sci. So I didn't end up being a civil rights lawyer, but I think this is much better. Sorry to all the civil rights lawyers out there. Y'all rock too.
We need civil rights lawyers and everything, but smart asses are good too.
That's right. That's right.
We are.
And smart, funny smart asses we really need, because laughter is good like medicine, especially in the era that we've just endured as a country. Maya, back to you for tomorrow. What are you looking for tomorrow? I mean, it is really, I think Kamala, unfortunately, has gotten a bit of the short end of the stick, the historic nature of what's happening because of everything else that's been surrounded between the violence and then Donald Trump's behavior and an insurrection and the fortress. When you see tomorrow, when you watch Kamala Harris get inaugurated, what are you going to think about? What does it mean to you?
Breathing again. There is a moment of peace right there, and that's what I'm hoping for, is a very peaceful day, and really being able to see a strong, smart woman own her voice on a national platform, an international platform, really, and to have so many young women, girls, boys, everybody witnessing that and what that looks like, what real power looks like in that space. And so I'm just excited to see her authenticity. I would love if she had her Converse on. I think that's great. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
It's us too, for a number of reasons. Lisa, before we show the promo, so what are some of the things that people can expect to see? Well, first of all, what does it mean to you to see Kamala get inaugurated tomorrow, and what are some of the things that people can expect from the show?
To finally see a woman in the White House, and for it to be such a brilliant, strong, powerful, badass woman who is able to take it to, Barr and Pompeo and Kavanaugh. We saw so many examples of just what an amazing person she is. That I love that she is going to be the person who breaks that glass ceiling, and not just for little girls to see that example, but I'm a mom of two sons. I'm really excited for little boys to see that. I want little boys to be growing up seeing women in positions of power and having that totally normalized, and the expectation that, of course, there are always going to be women at the table, women with a voice. Just like the generation that grew up with Barack Obama as the first president, that they remember it normalized a Black man as president, and this should normalize women and women of color at the highest levels of government. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to have a lot of really great guests on tomorrow. We have Molly Young Fast is going to be on with us, which I'm really excited about, and I know she's
Rick's
a big fan of
in
both
crime.
of you, and yes, Rick's partner in crime. I understand that she is tasked with attempting to keep Rick from dropping too many F-bombs during each show. So I'm on my best behavior here tonight. I'm not exactly sure why, but she's also going to have to attempt to keep me reined in.
Lisa, there's no adult supervision here.
No.
Isn't it good? Isn't it good?
Yes. And no censor.
Not being on network television is really, really a good thing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You're free to be who you are.
That's right. We get to be our authentic selves, who, apparently we are incredibly profane, and I'm not going to try to filter too much of it. We're going to have a lot of just everyday folks on too, because I think it's really important to have the voices of women like us who are out there doing the work, living the lives, dealing with COVID, trying to educate our kids while we're working full time, taking care of our parents. Just that whole mix that lands on women's shoulders is going to be a big focus of the show.
Absolutely. And women like us curse. So thank you guys so much. And
thank
tune in tomorrow night for the debut of their wonderful show, We're Speaking. We're going to leave you with a promo of their show. And Maya and Lisa, thank you so much, and good luck tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're Speaking is a show that elevates and amplifies the diversity and power of women's voices.
Black women are hugely responsible for getting Donald Trump, an incredibly racist president, out of the White House. We can't have real progress without real people.
So we want to hear from all of you. Text us, tweet us, come hang out in our Zoom room.
Welcome to We're Speaking on LPTV.
There you have it, folks. This is LPTV. It is one of a few things that we have in the works.
Yeah.
So check that out tomorrow. And before we
There's
leave
a lot
you
of
tonight,
scheming going on.
Yes, there is. There is. Before we close the show tonight, a couple things. So, as we always say, Abe is watching. There he is. Abe is watching. We are watching Senator Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is one of the worst possible people right now in the United States. He should be kicked out of the U.S. Senate for his role in the insurrection. He has not learned his lesson, apparently, even though we have been pointing out, among other people, some of his misdeeds. Sponsors and the Lowe's hotels, they said, no, you can't have your fundraiser here. People have really been taking it to Josh Hawley. But did he change course? Was he humble about it? No. He is still acting like an ass. And today he decided that he was going to hold up the nomination of Joe Biden's Homeland Security Secretary, Mayorkas, right? Alejandro Mayorkas. They were trying to fast track this because it's kind of important that we have a Secretary of Homeland Security. We have not had a Senate confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security since April of 2019. And Josh Hawley during the hearings today was like, no, I didn't like his answers on immigration. I'm not going to vote to fast track it. He is continuing to be an anti-democracy senator who needs to pay a price for what he's done. So he is part of what we call the Sedition Caucus and the coup caucus senators that are in the United States Senate. And we are continuing to watch him. And we want you to as well. So if you see any sponsors or you see things that Josh Hawley is doing, let us know. Tweet at us. Tweet at them and say,
give us a heads up.
That's right. Let us know that Abe is watching and the free market will decide.
We'll take it from there.
That's right. That's right. So just a little reminder of the coup caucus. Here's what Lincoln Project put out against Josh Hawley and his cohorts.
This is your coup. This is your siege. This is your insurrection. With your support for Donald Trump, you have brought this shame to America. You, Ted Cruz. You, Josh Hawley. You, Kevin McCarthy. You supported this. And you will be held accountable. This disgrace is all yours.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We are not letting them off the hook. And that ad is running in cable markets across the country. So you may
Missouri.
have seen it.
Yep, and across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you may have seen it.
Bakersfield, Missouri, Texas, Washington. Yep, they're not getting away with this one. They're just not.
No. And we will make sure of that as part of what we do here at the Lincoln Project. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Remember that tomorrow night we have a special show, a special inauguration show. It'll be at 7 p.m. tomorrow. So come join us. We will have historian Kevin Cruz on to talk a little bit about the history behind the inauguration. And some of our LP brethren will be giving great anecdotes and stories about their experiences during inaugurations and working with presidents and transitions. And so make sure you tune in for that tomorrow night. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to follow our new Twitter handle, LPTV. We have all things LPTV now. You can find in one place at our new Twitter handle, LPTV. So make sure you follow us and stay up to date with what's going on with us. Rick, you were starting to say something.
Just want to let you know, folks, tomorrow night when you watch this show, Donald Trump will no longer be president. And damn, that makes me feel happy.
It's the final countdown. I wanted to play that song so bad. We can't. Right. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Ba da 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 da. He's almost gone. We're out of here. See you guys tomorrow.
Good night, folks.
Joe Biden is
We'll see you
president.
tomorrow.
Hey, Donald, you hear that sound? That's the sound of moving vans. They're coming to pack you up and move you and all of your grift and indecency out of the White House. That's the sound of the cleaning crews coming to scrub the stench of your corruption and the stains from your lies from the Oval Office. You hear that? That's the sound of the exterminators coming to fumigate all that COVID-19 infection in the air that you could have kept out of the West Wing with a face mask. You hear that? That is the sound of the wall you finally built. The security wall around the White House. It's being removed to make way for a new president. A real president. The next president of the United States. Joe Biden. Hey, Donald, don't let the door smack you in the ass on the way out. Oh, but wait, what's that sound?
Probe into Trump's business practices.
It's the sound of the Southern District of New York, and they're coming for you.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.